Now, the iPhone 14 Plus is a phone that's overrated yet underrated at the same time. And let me tell you why. Now, the iPhone 14 Plus is a phone that has faced a lot of scrutiny, from its updated display to its very expensive price tag, all the way down to its somewhat rocky software experience that's plagued the iPhone 14 lineup as a whole. But luckily for you guys that are actually interested in the iPhone 14 Plus, I'm not going to be listening to all the outside noise. I'm not going to be listening to the blogs, other content creators, and I'm damn sure not going to be listening to Apple haters. This review is entirely based off my experience, so anything that I like, dislike, or I'm on the fence about is directly from my experience. And based on my experience, I will say that overall, the iPhone 14 Plus is nowhere near as bad as people say it is. Of course, there's the software bugs here and there, but besides that, it's an overall solid battery, the display is nice and big, and if I'm being honest, it was an overall pleasant experience that made me want to buy it for my little cousin. But besides my thoughts on the critics and opinions of others, I will be sharing my experience with the iPhone 14 Plus to help you guys decide whether or not it's actually worth buying. The iPhone 14 Plus has that signature look from the standard iPhones, which is pretty great for aesthetics, but I did want to see the whole iPhone 14 lineup with dynamic island instead to give it a newer feel. They also could have installed a USB-C port or even make the screen 120Hz, since it really doesn't provide anything fresh to the consumer. And besides the minor improvements they could have made, the iPhone 14 Plus has the lonely power button on the right, the volume rockers along with the mute switch on the left, and speakers with the lightning port on the bottom. Now, looking at its color, the version that I have is product red, and this is easily my favorite color in recent years. It has the really nice red matte sides along with the rich red glass back that looks really clean for aesthetics. And then when it comes to display, the iPhone 14 Plus has a 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR display that looks amazing in resolution, colors, and most importantly, size. Whenever I was scrolling through my phone, it looked very nice, everything looked good, the responsiveness was very precise, and I had no complaints about the overall feel. The only problem that I had with it was the refresh rate. The fact that it's 60Hz is ridiculous, and I know that many people won't mind if their screen is 120Hz or 60Hz, but if that's the case, Apple shouldn't be charging $900 for a below average spec. The bezels hug the edge of the phone very tight. This made doing things like watching movies or playing the game much more enjoyable, since there was much more screen real estate. And now when it comes to brightness, the iPhone 14 Plus is at 800 nits, which is much dimmer than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and I really noticed a difference when I was outside. Many times it was tough to see the screen on sunny days, but it wasn't the worst. Now next up, since the reason that a lot of people will consider the iPhone 14 Plus is because of its size, I want to let you guys in on the pros and cons of dealing with a phone this big. Now, the pros of a bigger screen is that watching movies, playing games, and the overall experience is enhanced due to you being able to see more. Also, this results in bigger parts in the phone, which means that the battery will have much more capacity. Now, the cons of having a screen this big is that it'll be a daily struggle trying to reach the top of the screen, and handling will be much harder since you'll need some pretty big pockets or you'll have it in your hand the whole time. Watching movies and content on this phone is amazing. The dual speakers creates that immersive experience when it comes to sound, and the speakers are extremely loud with really good quality. Now, the next thing that I want to cover is something that'll make or break your experience with the iPhone 14 Plus, and that's the battery. Now, I've tested out how long my 14 Plus lasts with high usage, and during my time of using it, I would get about 7 hours of screen time a day, and even though that's pretty good usage, it didn't stop my 14 Plus from being able to last all day. On average, I would end my day with about 20% worth of battery left, which is pretty impressive since I was using power-heavy apps like TikTok or even Asphalt 9. The Plus also supports 30-watt fast charging, which I had minimal problems with. It charges pretty fast, 75% in 55 minutes, but most of the time I charge it overnight, so it really didn't matter. Can't always be content though. We all know that Apple has the resources to provide us with an iPhone that can support 45-watt fast charging, which is a more fitting phone of this price. And then when it comes to usage, I was never the type of person to cut any corners to save my battery, and my iPhone had all day battery life, so most of the time I was charging it overnight. And during my time of using my 14 Plus, I had 5G on, my brightness was on manual and always medium to high. I'm using every power heavy app as much as I can. And again, I only use power saving mode a couple of times, meaning that if you are someone who mostly charges your phone overnight, you should be good no matter how much you use your phone. Now, looking at software, the 14 Plus supports iOS 16, which is supposed to sound good, but due to iOS 16 being buggy, there were some problems that got annoying. There were many times where my 14 Plus would freeze on me, and it would happen at the most random times, like whenever I'm chilling at work, at the gym, or even at the crib. And besides the frequent freezes, a majority of the time the software was very smooth and worked well. It felt like the 14 Pro Max, and I feel like it's gotten better since the last few updates. I also tested out some games on the 14 Plus. I play Asphalt 9, which is a game that can really test out the chip, and as you can see, it held up very well, and I didn't get any lags while playing. And now the final thing that I wanted to note was that the iPhone 14 Plus will be getting 4 to 6 more years worth of software upgrades, which means that you should be good if you're someone who wants extreme longevity. And now, just like the 14 Pro Max, the 14 Plus has some really loud speakers that were pretty good whenever I used them. I would usually use them in the house whenever watching videos on social media or YouTube, and the quality was still able to stay strong. And I also tested out how they sounded when playing music as well, and in my honest opinion, music from any phone is trash, but it's definitely good for this category. And I also used my 14 Plus as my alarm, and I had no problem waking up from it. I mostly woke up on the first alarm and notifications never got by me. Now the iPhone 14 Plus has a 12 megapixel main camera along with a 12 megapixel front and 12 megapixel ultra wide, and based on my usage over the past couple of months, I would say that they are extremely comparable to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. The iPhone has always been realistic in terms of color, like the colors are always toned down and you can tell that the photos aren't heavily processed. The Plus's zoom photos are pretty good as well. I've always found the ultra wide photos to be acceptable but not great, but as soon as you zoom in more, the pictures add much more detail. I also took some pictures in different modes. You have the standard mode, which is the most realistic. You have rich contrast that adds a lot of color. You have vibrant that brightens up the photo, and then you have warm and cool, which serve as pretty cool filters depending on the occasion. Selfies on the 14 Plus were the best in the smartphone market. I love how it handles my skin tone. I love how it looks realistic while also adjusting little details, and I've always been a fan of the iPhone selfies, and this time is no different. Now the videos on the 14 Plus were amazing. There were many things that caught my attention, but overall, the clean professionalism stood out the most. You can shoot videos up to 4K, it looks really good, and even though it takes up the most space, I think the quality is so much worth it. The stabilization was solid, pans were smooth along with brightness and contrast, and the sharpening is still at its peak. And I want to give you guys some of my random footage that I was able to capture on my iPhone 14 Plus. And there it is, you guys, my review for the iPhone 14 Plus. Now the 14 Plus is very interesting because it's a really great phone, but its competition is why I wouldn't recommend it. You can get the iPhone 13 Pro Max for around the same price. You can get the iPhone 12 Pro Max for cheaper, and there are many other options that are better than the iPhone 14 Plus. But there it is, you guys, my review on the iPhone 14 Plus. Now let me know, do you think that the 14 Plus is overpriced? Let me know. And again, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace.